Hello, welcome to this video. And if you're a historian, especially if you're, specifically into internet history, um, yeah, I know I'm a historical figure. Okay, I'm self-aware enough to be aware of that, of the things that I've done. Okay, and you might go, how are you a historical figure? How are you somebody important? That's the thing. I don't know what it is, but I know it's something because now, I might not make an impact in the way, say, other historical figures did, but I know that somewhere along the lines, I will make some sort of big universe effect, at least, you know? Like, for example, a big time historical figure, uh, Jesus Christ, for example, or Jesus, Jesus of Nazareth. You know, he was a man that was born in what is now 0 AD, and that's the reason why we even have the calendar, why we have that number, because the people who used the Gregorian calendar, if that's still a thing to you, were the people that tended to be the folks that were, very Catholic. And they were very religious, and they had a pope, and that pope was like, you know what, I don't like this calendar, and they were trying to make some sort of new calendar, and then it became really successful, and this pope guy made a standardized version of it. In other words, he invented the calendar, standardized the calendar, but it didn't really start to go, like, fully mainstream until, like, the 1700s, so, yeah. And by fully mainstream, I mean, like, it was just completely normal by pretty much even non-Catholic, societies to really use it. But ever since then, October 15th, 1582, the Gregorian calendar has not just been the most accurate calendar for days, weeks, months, years, decades, and centuries, but it's the most accurate calendar humans have ever made for that type of thing. You know? At least at the time. And I say at the time because time of recording, who knows? Maybe you have a calendar that's made for, the 31st century. And I say 31st like this because it's like, why is it called 31st? Or why is the 21st century called the 21st century if it doesn't have 21 on its century date? It has 20. It doesn't make any sense with the Gregorian calendar. Now, you could go, oh, but there was no 0th century. Actually, there kind of was, But they choose to deny it because it doesn't sound right to their mouths, So, 1st century is where we get that from. That kind of thing. But it's like, that would be me calling a 5-year-old a teenager, That would be like me calling somebody who's in their 20s in their 30s, Saying that they're in their 30s when they're in their 20s doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any fucking sense. Literally, And I know I'm responsible for other historical figures in a year, in a date, in a century that I'm not going to be alive for. Okay? It could be thousands of years by the time you're watching this video. Could have passed. I don't know, maybe I'm your favorite philosopher or your favorite historical figure or just somebody you just so happen to stumble upon. Now, yes, I know this version of the internet that this originates from, this language, probably won't always be the most reliable, and you probably don't even understand any of the words I'm saying anyways, so what's even the point? But I can tell you right now, there is a point for me, and that point is, well, at least I tried. You know, at least I gave it a chance. There are some people who don't give that a chance, you know? And now, I might not look like somebody who may have caused historical events or the rise of historical figures, but if I'm being realistic, knowing who I am, regardless if this person is related to me in some way, like blood related or not, regardless of who this, I'm assuming, human person, because I'm being realistic because I know who I am. This person will change up not just this world, but maybe even this universe, so much so that anything prior to it, like after it, anything just after it will just be like there was a before time, but it's like so absolute that you physically literally couldn't go back to that before time, you know? That kind of thing. In the sense of like, if you were to stay in your regular, era, that's how it would go. And I'm starting to notice that reality, like right now, it's super duper real, it's super duper great, but I want to say in the next 10,000 years, give or take, the world will slowly turn into a thing where it's like a bunch of stuff will happen, and then after this bunch of stuff, it will slowly, and I do mean slowly, after this era, start to become more and more like fiction, all fiction, any kind of fiction, like that's what it will start to turn into. Like the story will keep going on, but it will start to become reality, it won't just be a thing anymore. Now, I'm not saying it will be like a specific franchise or a specific universe. I don't think it's going to be like a horror movie universe. But if it does have a purpose, if it does have a meaning, it will probably be something like, say, if I were to put it into a franchise, probably like the Marvel universe or the DC universe, or say the Lego Ninjago universe or Naruto universe. I don't think it's going to be like it, or The Thing. Yeah, I don't see that happening, because even if there are creatures like that, realistically speaking, I'm telling you right now, that's not gonna be the way how the whole universe works, Like, it has to be more of a neutral end. It can't be too good, because too good would be, absolute pure, and there would be no reason to have evil. And not everything can be too evil, because if you have everything always evil all the time, you would have no reason to have good. Like there would be no reason to have good if you only had evil. And evil would not have a reason to exist if you only had evil. So you have to have a combination of the purest evil and the purest good to mix each other, to keep each other on track. Keep evil keeps good in track to keep them good, and good keeps evil in track to keep them evil, so to speak. There's every good in evil, and there's every evil in good. That kind of thing. Now, I know that sounds like yin and yang, but if you understand that reference. But, I think you get the idea. It is something to acknowledge. And you might go, well, if you know you're going to be a historical figure, like you said earlier in the video, and you know all about this stuff, how come you never said it in the videos prior to it? How come I didn't know about this? If you're somebody who didn't know, I don't know either. I really don't. I know it's going to be from something. And I know I'm going to make some big impact on the world. Now, I might not look like it at first. I might not seem like somebody who's going to, do certain things. But again, if I'm being realistic, I probably will. Like I'm not somebody who's gonna just hide and die and live my whole life the same way my entire life. I mean, I could, but the world does need its people, like it does need its historical figures, because we live in a world where time traveling is just not really a thing quite yet. So, you know? So there's not really a reason to know certain things. How did everything really happen? What really caused a historical figure or a historic thing to happen? What was the real reason behind this or that? I could be like, oh, but the 2120 pandemic. Yeah, but that one's kind of predictable. That one is expected. It's like a calendar date to something that might not even be a true remembrance to you. You might not even understand any of the words that I'm saying. You're just looking at it and going, this guy is speaking gibberish to me. And I don't know how much I did. And I know I'll do something in the future, because I've done crazy stuff. They've gone, big. So it's either go big or go bigger. There is no home, because there is no such thing as a home in this case. But when the universe starts becoming something like a fictional universe or something like that, where it becomes, how should I say? Like I said earlier in the video, like a fictional universe. This universe will become a fictional universe, so to speak. But then it's like, if it does, what would be the real universe? You know what I mean? If I'm just gonna die and be resurrected in some, universe where everything that would normally be fictional, like, the way superpowers use it in Marvel and DC, would that mean my universe, where it seemed non-fictional, is actually the real fictional universe? I don't have an answer for that. I genuinely don't. What if the world isn't a matrix? What if it's actually really reality? And we're just choosing to deny it because, we're afraid to admit that we're wrong. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how it is. It does get me thinking. A lot. I don't know if you're using some version of what I may have called the internet, but I don't know. What is the true meaning of life? I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. And you might go, oh, but the true meaning of life is this. Yeah, but where'd you get that from? You could say, oh, I got it from this. Where'd that get that from? You know? That kind of thing. Because it's like if there really was, say, a god or gods or something like that, and they knew everything, this, or maybe individual if you want to be specific. Let's just say one god in particular. Okay? Let's just say a monotheistic god. That kind of thing. Why would this one particular god know everything? If their knowledge is so infinite, why does it have to be infinite? You know, why can't it just be limited in some way? Limited in a way beyond our comprehension, but limited in some way. You know what I mean? Why does it have to know everything? And if it has all that knowledge, what's even the point of it? What's the point of having all that knowledge in our universe, infinite knowledge of our universe, and everything within it? That, say, another god in another universe knows everything, comes to their universe, and knows nothing. And they come over there. You know? Could be completely different. I don't know. You know? Is there a purpose to all of this? If not, then what's the point of having purpose? You know? If there is no God, then what replaces it? If there is a God, what kind of God? Now, for example, of a monotheistic religion, Christianity. Now, yes, there is the Trinity and stuff like that, but it's still in the form of one God that they believe in. They call him Jesus Christ. That's the human version of him. That's the version that they really allow because, well, that's the son, the human part of the person, you know, of the Trinity. That's the big part. If that God is true and he knows everything, then how come there was nothing that says, oh yeah, we should all think like robots. Oh yeah, we have free will. Why does he allow questioning of his existence? Why are people just denying it altogether? You know? Why are people just choosing not to? Why would Satan never rebel? You know? If he had full knowledge of what he was doing, if he knew what he was doing was a bad thing, and he knew he couldn't be better than God, he couldn't be a God better than God, why would he rebel then? He pretty much had no reason to rebel. Either than just, oh, I didn't like, puny humans, going in placement. The only thing I can really come up with is he was mad that humans were worshipping God and not the angels. Like it wasn't just the angels. Now that does align with, how should I say, Christian scripture. But here's the issue, is why did he rebel against that? Why did he allow himself to rebel in the first place? Because here's the thing, he didn't have to become the Eye of Sauron. You know? He could have literally just, not tempted Adam and Eve, let them thrive, and guess what? This whole imperfect thing, this whole Jesus sacrifice would have never happened. It would have never needed to happen. And he came at that specific time because, well, under their belief, he had to come in human form. He had to come at the right exact time, at the right exact moment. The time where it made sense for him to exist. 33 years existing on this earth and then just gone. Now, there was the 3-day resurrection. where he resurrected himself. And you might go, how could he do that? But he's God. He can defy all logic. You know? He's literally a God. He's literally the God of the Christians. You know? So by that, it's literally his universe, so he can do whatever he wants with it. And by that, I mean defy all logic, defy all emotion, all laws and everything if he wanted to. If he wanted to make a universe completely different, or if he wanted to make it like the DC or Marvel universe, he would have done that. But he didn't. He didn't, It isn't like a Star Trek or Star Wars. Yet. Maybe. I don't know. But I know one thing's for sure. If this God is the true God, then why am I questioning it? Why are you even watching this video? What's the point of all of this if it just doesn't really have a true meaning anyway? Or if, say, you were fully into it, but you never really understood it. Even if you did understand it, it's just, why? Why specifically him? Why not somebody else? Why specifically Satan and not somebody else? Why specifically you watching this video? Why specifically me making it? But I don't know what the true meaning of life is. I really don't. I might look like I have that answer, but I don't know. Whatever the answer is, it wants you to figure it out for yourself. It wants you to find out your own answer. But I really don't have an answer to that either, of why that is the case. And who knows, maybe I could be wrong. I could be wrong about that. There are people that they don't really have an opinion. They just want to win an argument. It's like, do you agree with my side or not? Rather than, is what I'm saying actually, good or not? Because they're thinking, hey, maybe there's morals involved or something like that. And they're not really thinking, maybe, regardless if I win or lose an argument, as long as I'm somebody who's true to my word and actually believes what I says and does what I believe, it would make sense. But no, that's not what they do. They pretend to believe in certain things. They just want to be in an argument to win the argument. It's never a, hey, even if you're in a debate, even if you're in an argument, regardless if you win or lose, as long as you're the person with the, knowing that you are the lesser evil, I guess, instead of trying to make it into a, winner or loser, I'm always right, you're always wrong mentality. It's more of just like a, I could be wrong, I could be right. But as long as we can have a good conversation and something that doesn't cause violence, something that doesn't have to be like fucking, kill or be killed, it can just be a conversation. And there's a thing called politics. And on the right wing, they have a lot of those kind of folks, and it's very common. But it's a lot more common. Like on the right wing, it's more about winning the conversation. But on the left wing, it's not just about winning the conversation. It's about keeping their side, only winning the conversation. Now, on the right wing, they can acknowledge a loss, but they try to use that as like some sort of win, whereas left wing will only try to make it look like it's always a win, you know? Like that kind of thing. And when it comes to debate violence, at least in terms of of disagreement, violence from disagreement comes more from the left wing than the right wing, because the right wing has opinions where it's like they'll have arguments, they'll have disagreements, and it might even lead to, nasty sounding debates or whatever. But the left wing, it's like for the right, it's like they'll try to dox you, or they'll try to get after you, they'll try to get you arrested or something like that. Left wing, it's not, hey, let's put you in a prison. It's, hey, let's have you killed. That's basically the mentality. It's not mentality of, I want to imprison the people I disagree with, because that's already extreme on its own. That's already bad on its own, Like what the right does. These people, they're basically doing the same thing, but the difference is instead of it's jail you, it's kill you. It's, we want to end your life now. They might not dox you, they might not imprison you, but they surely want you dead. That's basically what it's turned into. And at first it used to be like mostly the right or both sides, like a couple of decades ago, time of recording. And that's just how it was for a long time. And it was sort of mostly the right that was like this. But I want to say ever since the Charlie Kirk shooting, it flipped completely. Like at first it wasn't like nothing going on, but as soon as Charlie Kirk got shot, the internet just flipped. It flipped completely. To the point where now it's all just one-sided, But they try to put the double standard on the right. If a crime doesn't happen, they blame the right. If the crime does happen, they blame the right. Even if it's done by the right, obviously they acknowledge that that's an issue, that's a problem, and they still do it anyway, even though they acknowledge it. But on the left, when the right wing causes the problem, that's the right wing. When the left wing causes the problem, it's still the right wing to them. It's like this weird double standard. Like, yeah, the right wing has its prejudices, but it can acknowledge that it's from their side, Like, it can acknowledge that the bad things going on from their side are from their side, in the left wing or from the left wing. On the left wing, it's either right-wing issues that are caused by right-wingers or from the right-wingers, or issues that are caused by left-wingers from left-wingers are right-wing, to them. And this whole idea of left wing, right wing doesn't really make any sense, because why is it called left and right when it makes sense to be called, say, I don't know, red and blue, or donkey elephant, or say something like communist and I suppose fascist. And I can't really say like Nazi, because Nazi only really existed during World War II, and it's technically fascist, but it's really just saying like right-wing communist, like that's basically what it means. But it's mostly like when it comes to the right wing, the whole Nazi thing is mostly just a thing of its time. It's mostly just World War II. So these neo-Nazis are not really neo-Nazis. Okay, they're really just far-right radicals. They're not exactly Nazis, because that's obviously a war term for specifically World War II. That's where it mostly got its rise, and that's where it's mostly ended. So anything after that is really just either coping or it's just, you know, people not completely getting over the war despite the fact that it was a long time ago. You know? Which is very unfortunate. But don't get me wrong, again, there are a lot of problems and there are a lot of things that the right wing does need to acknowledge. You know, with the whole violence thing, or say race, you know, or sexuality. And I say they need to acknowledge it because, like, it's starting to get a little strange. But for the left wing, it's like they're not just denying that it doesn't exist. Like, they're like, the right wing is acknowledging it, but they're using that as a weapon against the left, whereas the left, they're not even acknowledging it, and they're still using it against the right. And they don't even realize that that's what they're doing. And it's gotten to the point where now it's just more of like, does this person politically agree with me? More, does this person, you know, actually a good person? You know? It's like, do they align with my politics? Like, pretty much, as long as you're like the most politically 100% aligned with somebody, you could literally be anything. Anything and anyone to these people. You know? Because right wing, the only time they really stop at that kind of thing, where it like aligns with their ideology, is if it's like somebody who just kind of like they would want to put in a prison, that kind of thing. So they would probably stop there. It's still bad. It's still really fucking bad, but it's like they're like aware that there may be a limit. You know? Like they're somewhat aware of it. But even with that awareness, it's still like they kind of fucked up with the whole January 6th thing. But the left wing is like, you could be a literal fucking, you know, cannibal pedophile, and they'll still like accept you as long as you're 100% communist or something, you know? But again, both sides do have their issues. It's just one side is being forced to acknowledge it more than the other, but because of it, it makes that other side that acknowledges it less, which is the left wing, it basically makes them think that they have an excuse to be more violent, which the right wing was kind of already violent, but any bad thing the right wing does, the left wing does twice as much, but tries to blame it on the right wing, you know? So, like, they're both doing the bad things, they're just doing different versions of it. And in the US in particular, which is my home country, time of recording, and I say time of recording because I don't know if the USA will always exist. Like, I'll always exist in what is now the USA, but what I mean is, right now the USA, but what I mean is, like, it may not always exist as a country is what I'm saying, that kind of thing. It may just be another flag of history. But look, I'm telling you right now, people are very politically separated, you know? Like, it's gotten to the point that people have been killed because they don't politically align with certain individuals, you know? Because the right wing, they're a little too accepting, and the left wing, they're too harsh, you know? They're too harsh. They're both too harsh, but it's like, it's so strange, you know? That kind of thing. But again, both sides have done, you know, stuff wrong. But we have to acknowledge who's getting away with it more, you know? That kind of thing. Rather than, you know, like who's actually causing most of the problems, rather than like, or at least most of the problems that they're getting away with, that people are getting away with. Rather than, which ideology do they align with, you know? Like, it doesn't matter if they're right wing or left wing. If you fuck around and try to find out, you will, you know? Like, if you keep fucking around like this, it doesn't matter how big of a criminal you think you are or how much you're not going to get caught. You know, even if that doesn't happen in your lifetime. Guess what? Eventually they'll find out. You will get a true answer, you know? But it's so hard for some people to acknowledge that kind of thing. You know? And right wing has a hard time acknowledging it because, you know, they're thinking, hey, maybe the left is doing the gender non-binary things, and they're like communists or something. So we gotta put them in prisons or whatever. Left wing is like, oh, these people are fascist Nazis. We gotta kill them, you know. But there are some right-wing extremists, but they're a minority, you know? But they're a general minority. Now, that might change over the course of history, and the whole left-wing, right-wing thing might not exist anymore. But at the time of the recording, at the time of me saying this, it does exist. It is an issue, you know? At least for now. But in the future, it will just be like all in the past of like, oh yeah, that's that one weird time where people were getting really violent and nasty all the time, you know? That kind of thing. But I really hope, you know, regardless of how religious or non-religious I'll become in the future, of whatever religion I'll be a part of, if I ever do get a part of a religion, a spirituality, a religion, whatever. Regardless, I really do hope this era does end, and not just end in a way of like, oh, we're gonna have it again sometime later. No, I mean like permanently end, and maybe we'll have to have a situation where it's like so bad, so tragic, so awful, in just a way where they have no choice but to acknowledge it in such a way where, you know, nobody will want to do something like that again, you know? But don't get me wrong, violence for political reasons or religious reasons will probably still exist by the time you're watching this, you know? But the way that it exists in my time, the way that it exists in the year 2026, from where I'm from, yeah, it's probably not going to be the same as it once was. And obviously, I don't think it will. And there are a lot of other issues in the world. You know, like I don't remember stuff. I try to remember stuff, but I really don't really remember much of anything. You know what I mean? Like, it's really, really hard for me to sometimes remember certain things. It's kind of hard to just know stuff when you don't even remember the stuff you're trying to remember. You know? Like, it gets on your head. It really just gets in your head. And unfortunately, I have, you know, not really remembered certain stuff. I just really wish I could. But anyway, I know we were talking about politics or whatever, but let's move on to stuff like video games. Video games, books, movies, TV shows, music. Let's start with music. Music has kind of fallen off a cliff. You know, like, it's still a thing. Yeah, you have those people who listen to music like all the fucking time. You can do that now. You have people who can do that now. But it's like, why are you listening to noise all the fucking time? I mean, yeah, music is noise, but I mean, metaphorically speaking, you know what I mean? Like, where it's just like ass music or music that can literally, and I'm not talking like, oh, it's ass music. I'm talking like the music that they listen to, they really do need to turn it down because they are becoming deafer. They are becoming physically deafer because the music that they listen to is physically so loud that they are literally physically getting deafer, you know? Like it's real. Like they're not hearing things when I say things to them. And they were not deaf before. They were not deaf before. You know, they were somebody who actually had normal hearing, but they listened to music so much that they started losing their hearing. And it doesn't matter what genre you listen to or what type of, you know, musician or music player you prefer. And I'm not going to really call it artist because if you call it artist, basically what you're saying is that um, you don't want them to really think about, you know, the consequences of their music. There are a lot of famous people that go under the label of artist, but you kind of lose the meaning because when I think of art, I think of paintings, I think of statues, I think of things you can physically see or touch. I don't think of sound, you know? Like, it doesn't come to me. And you guys gotta really stop doing that because it gives a lot of people who really could make good music. Basically, it makes them. It makes them tend to be more narcissistic. I can't tell you how many stories, actually, I probably could, but there are many, many times where people who, once they started getting constantly called an artist for their music, basically they started to lose all meaning with the way that they made sound, you know? And then they just became like a one bar wonder. Like, I'd rather be a one album wonder or a one hit wonder than, you know, a one bar wonder. You know, because one bar wonders are usually the ones that are most likely to be forgotten. You know, even one hit wonders, even if they keep releasing, you know, music for their entire rest of their life after that, it's still like you still have that one full song that people know you for. Like, for example, Rick Astley's most famous song is Never Gonna Give You Up. He's a very, very famous example of a one hit wonder, but guess what? He still releases new music. He still makes new songs and stuff like that. You know, at least in his lifetime, time of recording, at least if he's still alive, if you're watching this. But he still released music throughout his lifetime from that one song. Whereas one bar wonders, yeah, they might release, you know, newer songs and might have an audience, but one bar wonders, yeah, they're usually somebody that is like, you might think about it that one time, but outside of that's all they get. That they will literally only get 15 minutes of fame. Whereas the one hit wonder, yeah, they'll just be out there. You know, they'll just be always that one song guy or something like that. And then there's stuff like Michael Jackson or whatever. And there are many, many genres. And then there's country, but the thing about country is it's kind of dying off now. You know, like it's a genre that got popular because of rap getting popular during the 2010s. But it took a lot longer for country to really get popular. So when it started to get big, rap was already at the height of its popularity during the 2010s. And country at this new golden age for country is just now starting to end. So try to hop on this country ride, so to speak, because it's only got a couple more years left. Literally. I'm not joking you. It's literally got till like 2027, physically speaking, because a lot of the big musicians have either died, like they passed away, they either retired, or they're just at the end of their career, So they got like about a year or two before they might move on to another genre or something, because that's where it seems to go. It seems to go towards another genre. But right now, like, country is sort of a big thing, but yeah, it's gonna wear off. It's gonna wear off, But what is it gonna change into? I have no fucking clue. I have no fucking clue, And then there's books. Books. Holy crap. I'm telling you, man. Literature. Or should I say cliterature? Cliterature. Some bullshit. It basically, it's gotten so bad that even reading is getting dumber. That kind of thing. Where they think, oh, because I put my big name in the title, I put my name in big letters, oh, all of a sudden my book is good. Like, what the fuck? No, just because a bunch of people pre-ordered your romance slop does not necessarily mean that, hey, oh, it matters now. Like, no. All those words really mean nothing at the end of the day or night, at the end of the morning, day, evening, or night. It doesn't really matter, because it's not like everybody's gonna be reading it anyways. That kind of thing. Because buying books is a separate thing, really, from reading books, reading and writing books, And when it comes to reading and writing, most people are going to be learning how to read better than they learn how to write. And they say if you don't figure out how to, work both of them out, like if you only just do one, the other one suffers. And for most people, they're more likely to do reading than they are to do writing. So for most of society now, writing is the bigger thing. Writing is getting people to actually write is, digitally or physically, is the thing people lack in more, for a lot of cases. But there are some people that are just like, they can write real good, but they can't read real good. They do exist, but they're a minority, so to speak. Technically speaking. And, there are a lot of problems. And I'll get back to it later. But right now, let's talk about video games. Okay? Lock and load. Alright? Video games are in a place right now where they're kind of just existing digitally. At this point, sometimes I just go back to arcades just to experience the real video game experience. You go pew pew, pew pew, shoot dead. Oh no, we have to get a new coin. That's how it was going. That's how it be going. And then there was the whole time of recording, the whole what was that one video game called? Pragmata drama. Original Pragmata drama. With the whole child thing. Like, it's gotten to the point where people that are, like, because they were abused as a kid or whatever, Like, it's became so common and it's became so, out the window that now it's like you get people who get worried about, oh, you're dating a person the same age as you? You're dating a woman that's a few seconds younger than you? Oh, pedo, pedo, pedo. Like they're not thinking anymore, and they're both consenting adults, and they're both like, say, 30 or something. 30 years old or whatever. Like, that's just how it's become. And now that they see stuff like this, they're like, oh, pedo, pedo, pedo. They're not really thinking, hey, maybe, just maybe, calling everybody a pedo, calling everybody a creep, trying to get everybody to your feelings, trying to get everybody to your, what's the word? Ugliness temperature doesn't mean everybody else has to do it. Okay? We don't have to go into your ugliness temperature. Like, I'm not a big fan of the whole Pragmata game or whatever, but it's not because, oh, this guy was being a pedophile. It's not my particular cup of tea. It's not my particular video game that I would like to play. But if you're into something like that, that's fine. It's just, it's a bit more expensive than it needs to be, and it's, not, like, again, not my kind of thing. But saying that it's like pedophilia or some bullshit like that, and I thought I knew people who are retarded, man. Like, that gotta be a skill issue, bro. And that's not the only issue. There was the whole Just Stop Killing Games or something like that, or Stop Killing Games Company or whatever they call themselves. Now they're reliable and they're a good, good group. But it's like, how should I say? They're like a YouTuber who was in their experimental stage and now is in their golden age. And they might be like that for the next few years, or hell, even maybe the next several decades. But eventually this, Stop Killing Games group will eventually wear off, and if they're still around, they will turn into a husk. They will turn into a death of what they once were, and eventually they'll just disappear into some miserable lump. Copyrighted lump, That's what it really looks like. And obviously there are problems with movies and TV shows. Ooh, let's go with movies right now. Movies, I tell you that right now. Like, they think that they can just get away with making a really shitty movie now. Like, they're basically just getting away with shitty movie after shitty movie and having it in really high quality. But the problem with having it in high quality, the way they have it in high quality specifically for those kind of movies, is that basically it kind of ruins it. And yes, older movies had that problem with lower quality, but it was like, yeah, you could really tell it was pretty much of their time, whereas now it's like they don't have that excuse of being of their time, like, they have the advanced version of the internet, they have an advanced version of shit, they can actually make it look good if they wanted to. It exists, like, what's it called? That movie, Project Hail Mary didn't mean nothing, or at least it shouldn't mean nothing. But, damn, man. It changed a lot. And they really do need to start fixing that up and start realizing, hey, stop just making basically audio with video attached to it, and stop making basically just, that for the internet. No. I don't care if it's ad friendly, I don't care if it's user friendly. If you, the director, don't like to watch the movie yourself, what's the point of even making it? I'm not saying you have to make it the absolute masterpiece. I'm not saying you have to make it just watchable. I'm saying, as long as you can realistically make it and enjoy it, then it has a reason to exist. You know, like, it doesn't have to be an absolute masterpiece. I get that. It doesn't have to be like the thing that wins all the awards, but it at least has to be uh, a watchable, entertaining movie that's worth the watch. You know, because if you will watch it, then somebody who's into that kind of stuff that you make will be the kind of person, like the audience that you have will be you. Okay, you are your true audience. Now, when you release it out into the world, your intended audience is basically just you, different versions of you, okay? They're all people who like your type of movie, that kind of thing. That's what I would do, you know? I would make movies that I would want to watch myself, especially in the future down the line, you know? That kind of thing. However, I think, I would like movies, say, at the end of my life, you know, whatever my last year of life would be like. That kind of thing. But it is what it is, you know, my last 366 days, or 67, if you want to be on the nose about that. But hey, is it the end of the world? I don't know. Perhaps it is. Perhaps it is. But dog, what are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do? Oh, they did this, they did that. And then there's TV shows. Like, movies is a whole nother thing, but TV shows, ooh. We got a thing with TV shows. I miss crossover episodes. Like, I used to hate crossover episodes because of how common they were. Now it's like they're so little, or they're so like rare, that when they do come around, it's like a big deal, you know? Whereas a couple of years ago, your average crossover episode just happened. Whereas now it's like, unless it's a really big franchise at the time, you know, or up and coming big time franchise, most people are not going to notice when a crossover episode happens, because they don't give a fuck, you know? Like, it's not a thing. The only time a crossover episode shouldn't really happen in a show is if it's like one of those shows where it doesn't really make sense in universe to just have it anyways. Whereas shows that, like, if you have crossover episodes really, really early, it has to be one of those, like, shows that make sense lore-wise, or at least just be one of those shows where it's basically just a crossover episode from the beginning, you know? Because it's either you put it really early into the show or much later into the show, you know? Like, if I were to make a very long series show, like, say, a 13-season show, I wouldn't put crossover episodes until, like, season 4, you know? Until, like, season 4 or 5. Because you need at least, like, 3 seasons worth of lore in your average regular show, in your average, regular, you know, fictional show to have enough lore and enough, you know, because the first season is when the fan base that you create gets used to the show, gets used to this universe, is welcome to this universe. The second season is where you start to really lock in, and where you really start to, you know, expand onto the universe and show what this could potentially be. Like, this is like what it could be, you know? It's like, it's the beginning, it's experimental stage. Second one is what you're trying to guarantee. And third one is like what its true potential could truly become, you know? Like, the first one is experimental, so it could go any way, whereas second season, it's like showing that true potential of that specific way, and then season 3 is either going at that full potential or setting up for its full potential, you know? Like, that's basically what it should be. And how your brain, like, you might not realize it, but when your brain watches episodes, basically, you treat the very first episode like it's the very first episode, but you treat the second episode like it's also the very first episode, you know? And then the third episode, that's the second episode in your brain's head. And then it slowly becomes the third episode, in your head, like halfway through that episode. But for the first two episodes, that's really just one episode, but like two different versions of that in your head, Like that's basically how you think about it as. And then it keeps going. But how I would have an episode is basically just like, I don't know, maybe I would have a few company logo things show up or whatever, and then I would have the intro, recap, I would have the actual episode, and then I would have outro and then end credits. I wouldn't do coming up, or next up kind of thing, because those kind of things really, like, they kind of spoil the show, or they kind of ruin the show. They don't really let you just kind of explore it. Same thing with YouTube videos. They're like, coming up, and then they'll show you this one particular thing, and then once it leads up to that one particular thing, it's like you already seen it, so what's even really the point of watching that particular part? Like you want to skip over it, that kind of thing. And I'm glad for YouTubers who don't do advertisements, or YouTubers that if they do like sponsors, they take their sponsor, and it should be just one sponsor per video, They'll say, hey, we're going to talk about this subject, and then, they have their sponsor, and then after they have their sponsor, they have their intro or whatever, and then they just make whatever video they're talking about, and then they end the video. That kind of thing. And that's what that is, that is whatever it is. Alright? Alright. Anyway, let's talk about I don't know, reading and writing, because we're kind of like, we'll probably get back to that a bit later, but reading and writing has kind of fallen off, like eventually, like reading and writing won't always, won't be a reliable thing. Like it will always exist in some form or another, as long as it has existed, but like it won't always be needed. It won't always be a thing that people will use, if you know what I mean. Like in the sense of in their day-to-day lives. Like that's just how it's going to work. And especially writing. Not so much reading, but especially writing. Because if you don't have writing, you're not going to really have much reading, if you don't write anything down, then there's nothing to read. That kind of thing. If somebody didn't have a language to make. So, there's that. And if you ask me, the alphabet should be organized by what letters people remember. That kind of thing. Like, for each letter, it's just like in whatever order they remember it the most. That kind of thing. Like, that's how it should be, but it isn't, Like, it doesn't matter, like, what letters they, what order they remember it in, as long as they remember all the letters, that kind of thing. That's how I would have it, just because, that would be a lot easier for people. But you might go, how would they have the alphabet song? Well, that's the standardized version, like make that like the big standardized version. You don't have to have it that specific way. It's just in that specific way because That's just the traditional way of having it. It's not like you have to write it that way. Even in this world, you still don't have to have it that way, that particular way. You know? So there's that as well. Yeah. And it's unfortunate because if you can't read and write certain things, you're not going to be very good understanding certain complicated subjects, you know? Because, oh yeah, the AI can just read it for me, the AI can just do it for me. But even if, you live in a world where it can always be reliable, it can always, tell you what to read, what to write, that kind of thing. The issue is basically you lose your sense of independence. You lose your sense of understanding things, of having the ability to get a chance to critical think, you know? So you don't even really learn anything when you do stuff like that, when you don't read and write, you know? And then back on again with movies and TV shows. Especially TV shows. There's just not anything good anymore, really. And for the stuff that is good, it's usually like they only last a couple of seasons, or if they do last long, you have to buy it on a special streaming service. Like it gets really annoying. It gets really annoying. So there's nothing I can really go on to that. And there was a lot of things about sports. Ooh, sports. That's one I like watching sports, okay? I'm a sports fan. I consider myself to be a sports fan. Alright? Like I'm a big time sports fan. Like to be specific, Detroit Lions. Okay? Like that's my team, that's my thing. Now not everybody's a Detroit Lions fan, that's true. Not everybody likes that team, and that team might not always exist. But for the time that it does, at least in my lifetime, I'm still going to be mostly a fan of it. The only time I really leave is if it was a situation of like either the team doesn't exist anymore, or it's like a situation where it gets so bad that I have no choice but to leave the NFL as a whole, Like that's basically that kind of thing. I don't know what else to tell you. And I'm also like not just football or gridiron football, but stuff like baseball and kind of soccer, but it's just kind of it's overhyped and over popular, it's just kind of um overrated, like don't get me wrong, it's a good sport and there are a lot of famous people from that particular sport, but it's just like there are some things I really do want to change up, like let everybody be able to use their hands like a goalie. In fact, get rid of the goalies and make them just a part of the regular team. So that way it's like you're protecting the net or whatever, but it's like, you don't have a goalie there to specifically be in that spot. That kind of thing. Because, yeah, goalies are good and all, but it's like that kind of job doesn't really need to be used in that sport. That kind of thing. And give everybody the ability, like a goalie, like be able to use their hands. So, yeah, it wouldn't be body no hands ball. It would just be body ball, basically. That kind of thing. And make a rule where it's like, I don't know, you can only have the ball for like, I don't know, 60 seconds. And if you don't get it out in those 60 seconds, you say, I don't know, the other team can get the ball, or say you don't score a ball with like score a point within 3 minutes every 3 minutes, every 3 minutes that it's being actually played. Um, Anytime that's going on, that kind of thing. Then also the other team could get the ball, like if you don't try to score or if you aren't, scoring. And then on top of this, the in between time, the break time, stop the clock. Have a begin and stop the clock, that kind of thing. And only like there's only a couple of reasons. If there's like a big major thing that's going on where they like have to stop the clock, like say an emergency situation, or say like there's just something where it's like, oh, something happened and we have to immediately cancel the game or something like that. Or it's like, they're on break or the end of the game happened, that kind of thing. Like they're in the in between time of when the first and second half are going, that's when you stop the clock. Like immediately, automatically stop the clock, that kind of thing. But because, the machines or whatever, it will do it perfectly. But you know what I mean. You know what I mean. And then after that, they just go. And unlike in traditional soccer, where basically you just have regular ties, when it's a 0-0 game, yeah, that's a tie. But like we got to make 0-0 games a lot more rarer. Like it's something in history that like shouldn't really exist in that game, because it's like, yeah, you might be able to name a tied game in like an NFL game, but it's like, name a tied game that goes 0-0, then you would have to go way back. You know what I mean? Like, that's basically what it should be. It should be like a thing where if it is a tie, specifically a 0-0 tie, it's so rare that when it does happen, it's like years or decades from the last time it happened, at least in that league or in that, specific team's history in like a long time, or it's maybe their first time, that kind of thing. Like it should just be a rare thing. And ties in general, like I think we would still allow it, but the difference is that if the tie is where both teams scored points in that game during that game, like say 1-1 or 12-12, something like that, or 10-10 or 9-9 or whatever it may be, or 20-20, that kind of thing. Whatever point it is, if they both scored points, whichever team was the last to score wins the game. Otherwise, if it's not a tie and it's just regular, then it's like, you know, um, if you have a bigger point than the other team, then you win. But if you were the last team to score and you both have a tie and you both scored during that game, whoever was the last to score wins that game. Like that's how it should be. That's how it should be. Because then you could move on forward. You could make the rules even better. Because then it's like, that's what you could do. Like, don't get me wrong, there could be some problems and we could change up some rules to make it where it's like more honorable, more, chutzpah, to make them have bigger points than the other guy. But to have that tie rule, because ties are so fucking common in soccer, bro. They're just so fucking common. I mean, there's hockey, there's a bunch of other sports, but at least they have, special time preferences and stuff like that to figure it out. Soccer doesn't have this really, you know? Like that's what I would change to it. And maybe a few other things with the whole what do you call it? Off bound or whatever the fuck. That kind of stuff. Like I would probably change that rule, and I would probably also allow people to just like make them have cheap balls, so that way if they kick the ball out of the field, out of the uh, the place where they have the game, and it goes into the audience or something, and it lands on somebody, and they grab it or whatever, they get to keep it, that kind of thing. So that way, You know, you can have basically really, and I mean really cheap balls, just cheap enough where it's still like professionally made and still like made for the game, but just so cheap, just cheap enough where you can constantly pump it out and it can just be like any ball, you know, that kind of thing. So that way you don't have to like worry about, hey, you know, return the ball back, you know, that kind of thing. Because you kind of you kind of lose the original intent of what that is, you know, that kind of thing. Because baseball does it, hell, even gridiron football does it, you know, and I assume basketball does it as well. But that's generally how it goes, you know, for a lot of sports out there, that kind of thing. And I would probably say even hockey to an extent, you know, but hockey pucks are hard. Hockey pucks are really fucking hard. But still, you know, what are you gonna do? What are you going to do? You know? Like, are you gonna let it get to your head, or are you just gonna stand there and look good? You know what I mean? But yeah. And then make the referees only really have power, you know, maximum like 30 minutes before the game and during the game and like 10 minutes immediately after the game. But that's it. You know, like don't give them any power really outside of the game unless it's like, you know, abuse or like emergency stuff or just like whatever. Don't let them really have any power or control, you know, and also have like, you know how they do like promotion and relegation. That's how they should have it with their audiences to an extent, and how they should have it with the referees and staff like that. You know, they should have it like basically the entire thing be all, um, you know, promotion and relegation, that kind of thing. And for every one promotion, there can be a downsized, but like, um, if you get regulated down 3 leagues. You know, like that's how it should be. And if you're just on the bottom league, you're on like the very last league. Um, and you keep getting like regulations every year, like you're getting downward every year, then you just stay on the bottom. You know, like you don't really get on the top. And when you get promoted, when you get up a league, when you get better, you only go up 1 league. You know, that kind of thing. But every time you fail, you get down 3 leagues by default. You know, like that's how it should be. So that way, no one true team can fully dominate. And if it does dominate, that team can also be regulated. You know, for being a little too good. You know, that kind of thing. So, if you win more than 4 times in the highest league and the highest top league in that regulation and promotion system, you go down 4 leagues. You know, like that's basically how it could be, because then they would have to force their work up to the top again, that kind of thing. And it would matter a real big thing where it's like the top one gets the most payment, gets the most, you know, exchange, gets the most well known, that kind of stuff. But it would really like force people to just like get in their head, you know, to just like, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. And yeah, that's what I would do with that kind of situation. But it's whatever, you know. It's whatever. And I'm just out here talking. And There are changes that I would make to cricket or to make to baseball. And for baseball, what I would do is instead of, you know, stopping the clock every single fucking time, what they should just do is only really stop the clock if it needs to be stopped. If it's like an emergency or if it's just like the break time, that kind of thing. And then, it is what it is. And then when they switch in between teams and stuff like that, the clock still goes, that kind of stuff. And then they just keep like switching every once in a while to keep going or whatever, to keep playing, that kind of thing. Or just have one side play one way, where like half of the game it's like this one team is playing, and then the other half this one team is playing. Or just make it have like 4 halves where it's like every 10 minutes you do a switch, that kind of thing. And it's like 40 minutes, where it's like 10 minutes they have their thing, and then 10 minutes this other team starts playing, starts battering, I guess. And I think another one that would be good, I guess, is letting everybody have helmets and stuff like that. Like all the players wear helmets. That kind of thing. So that way, they don't get hit in the face or something. Because for some reason, when it comes to the batter, oh no, they're allowed to wear a helmet. But when it comes to the pitcher, the person who throws the ball to the batter, they're not wearing a helmet for some reason, and that just really sucks. But whatever. Anyway, I gotta go. But thanks for watching. Bye.